Hello, I'm James,
Hi, I'm Jimmy,
and welcome to A Job Done Well.
the podcast that helps you improve your performance and enjoyment at work.
Good afternoon. What are we talking about today then?
Afternoon, James. Today we are talking about how you make more money.
Money,
To
filthy lucre.
Filthy lucre. To quote from the great film Jerry Maguire, "Show me the money." That's what we're going to do today.
I haven't seen that.
You need to watch it,
There's
James.
a
You need
thing.
to watch
All
it.
right, I'll try it. So what are we talking about that for then? A stupid question, if ever there was.
It is a bit, but we are going to talk about it because it's the driver of work for many people. It's the motivator for many people. It's how people define success, but it also comes with some real downsides. And we've got experience of doing reasonably well and experiencing the downsides. So we thought we'd share some of our strategies of motivation and money.
Yeah, so it's a little bit like that rather smug saying, do you live to work or work to live? So how important is the work and the money to you?
Yeah, unlike you to have a smug saying, James.
Well, all right.
So anyhow, before we get into that, what have you been up to recently?
Well, very exciting. I have just bought myself a new iPhone. My iPhone is an iPhone 7. It's getting on a little bit and the battery's died on it. So I've just
It's
bought
done well,
myself a new
though. I mean,
iPhone. Yeah.
Jesus.
But, when you buy your first iPhone, it's really exciting, isn't it? You get this fantastic toy. You upgrade and all of a sudden it's the same flipping thing. You're just spending several hundred notes on it. So it's not terribly exciting. Hasn't turned up yet, but then this afternoon when it turns up, I've got the joy of trying to transfer all of my stuff from one to the other.
Well, back in the day when you were doing it, what was it like? It's virtually like cutting and pasting stuff and doing it by steam engine. But yeah, you put them next to each other and they will talk.
Yeah, we
Sweet
shall see.
music for you, James.
Yeah, not with my old one, it won't. But
we'll see.
yeah, so how about you?
Well,
No, just a question there, actually. I wasn't thinking
Yeah.
about it. Do you think a new phone makes me sexier?
I think it would take rather more than a new phone to find
Well,
you
there you
sexy,
go.
James. Trust me.
So-
Well, just in terms of new gadgets, I avoided a new gadget this week because I
No,
was
did you?
buying a new television for our front room just because the old one is pissing me off. And then I realised the reason it's pissing me off is the usability of the remote, not the actual television itself.
Okay.
So I bought myself a new remote for 25 quid and bingo, it works perfectly. So I just saved myself from buying a new telly.
Very good.
I was on the cusp. I was researching which telly
You're on the
I
cusp
want.
researching. Yeah.
Idiot.
So why is money important then?
It is obviously the reason why many of us go to work, but it's also how we define success and failure. And actually, depending on who you talk to, people will say it's a big motivator or they'll claim the moral high ground and say it's not a motivator, when actually really it is a motivator. Because if you think back to Maslow's hierarchy of needs, you have to have the base needs in place before you can get on to the I'm peace with the world. Well, the base needs are often about shelter, food, stuff like that, the stuff that money buys for you. So it is a real motivator for people, but it also does underpin a lot of behaviour and culture and the way companies work, just because of the structures they have and the way people behave around those structures. So it is an important part of work. And so we thought we would share with you some of our hints and tips of what we've learned. So this is our perspective. It's not that this is foolproof. It's just our perspective on how you can go about trying to earn more money.
Yeah. Cool. So, money won't buy you love then.
Which isn't strictly true.
Depends which street in Nottingham you go to. Yeah. But it does buy a lot of things. So go on, what does it buy you?
Well, it buys you freedom and freedom of choice. I mean, often people talk about being financially independent, and what they mean is that they've got enough money to stick two fingers up at their job, so they can do what they choose with their time.
I used to work with a guy once and he put it very nicely. He said, you don't need that much money. What you need is your fuck you money.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is just enough to be able to tell people where to go and stick it.
Yeah. So that is freedom. It also buys you possessions, so there's the materialistic side of things. And for some people, not for everyone, but it also does get you respect. So other people do look at you with an amount of respect or envy at times.
Well, but that's mixed, isn't it? Right. So here's a story. I used to work for a guy, and we were having a conversation about whereabouts in Nottingham I lived, and he said to me, "Oh, I bet you live in West Bridgeford." And if you listen to this and you don't know where West Bridgeford is, it's the sort of chintzy bit of Nottingham.
Middle class
So
suburb.
middle class. Well, it's not really middle class. It is very upper middle class. You live in West Bridgeford, don't you? And I looked at him and I said, "No, I do not live in West Bridgeford. It's full of flipping people driving white Range Rovers up their gravel drives." And this guy was much more senior than me. And I looked at him and I said, "Please don't tell me you drive a white Range Rover." He looked at me and says, "No, mine's a black one." So, yeah, but money doesn't necessarily buy you respect. That's the point I'm trying to make. You can show what you've got, but it doesn't mean people are going to like you for it necessarily.
Not necessarily. And some people will like you and some people will absolutely despise you for it. But it also does drive your attitudes and behaviours. So, like you say, the amount of tolerance you'll have for bullshit at work or the choices you'll make with your career. And it does, for some people, it creates a finishing line. So I remember when me and a friend of mine, by the time we were 30, we wanted to be earning 30 grand a year. That was our finishing line. And we decided that if we got to 30 and we weren't earning 30 grand a year, we would turn to crime. There's got to be an easy way of doing it. Now, don't get me wrong. This is not our advice. We are not saying turn to crime. When I was 29 and a half, I got a pay rise that took me over 30 grand. I was quite relieved I didn't have to become a criminal to be successful. But in all seriousness, it creates a finishing line. People will think how much money they need to buy something, achieve something, retire, whatever it is.
Yeah, it's a score. Definitely a score.
Yeah.
Well, and then there's another question, right? Does money buy you happiness? And I've seen some research on this, and it comes back to your point about Maslow's hierarchy of needs. To a certain point, money does buy you happiness, absolutely. If you're putting a roof over your heads, or you're feeding your kids, or you
worry less about stuff,
you don't have to worry about stuff. So up to a point, it certainly buys you happiness. After that, it doesn't make a damn of difference to your happiness at all, until you get to the point where you've got so much money that you have to worry about, people kidnapping your kids. So actually, people who've got an awful lot of money, it doesn't make them happy at all.
Also, if you're going on to happiness and billionaires, there's the story that you often tell, James, about Bill Gates, isn't there?
Oh, yeah. No, there's a man who I do respect. Yeah, who's got a lot of money. Yeah.
But his happiness doesn't come from the amount of money or keeping score or how many cars he drives. His happiness comes from what he does with the money.
Yeah, how he's spending it.
Yeah, and he does it for the good of the world. And I guess you can see how he's getting some satisfaction, some happiness out of that.
Well, it makes you wonder how happy he is compared to how happy is Elon Musk at the moment. Interesting thought.
Well, if people keep blowing up Teslas and stopping buying his stuff and slacking him off on social media, all the more misery to him, I say.
Yeah. Anyway, then, so let's just assume, though, you are in a position where you want to make more money.
Right. Yes.
And we're talking about money here in a corporate environment, which is something we can talk about. We're not, into entrepreneurialism or anything like that. If you are a wage slave, what are our top tips for making more money? So go on, what are you going to go for? Where do you start?
Well, the first one I think is think about your education. I know this is hypocrisy coming from somebody who has a very limited academic education, but actually the statistics do tell you that the more you are educated, the more you earn. Remind me what the numbers were, James.
Well, I had a look online, and there are lies, damn lies in statistics, but apparently if you have one degree, the mean nominal salary for a working age graduate in the UK is £40,000, allegedly. If you have two, you've got a postgraduate degree. The mean nominal salary is 45 grand.
Yeah.
And if you have no degree, the mean nominal salary is 29,500. Now, you're going to ask me what a mean nominal salary is. I've got no idea. But I think the point is that the better educated you are, the more likely you are to make more money.
On average.
On average.
And all of these will be averages, won't they?
Yeah. My daughter went to, she's currently looking to go to university, and she was looking at economics, and she went to this lecture hall, and the economics teacher stood up and told her that if you want to make a lot of money, on average, the best thing to do is become a dentist, apparently in the UK. So, you may, I know, you sit in a room looking at people's teeth all day. But apparently there are things you can do from an education point of view if you want to make more money. So
Which does lead to then the choices that you make about what industry you work in. So thinking about the type of industry, the type of job, or the type of company, I think all of those three things can influence them. So let's just pick them up one by one. My example around industry is I started off working in the gambling industry, and you were badly paid. This may have changed, but at the time you were badly paid. And the reason why you were badly paid is because you spent all day working with sports. I was paid to watch football matches. So as a result, your salaries weren't that competitive. If you compare that to where I ended up in financial services, where you are rewarded significantly higher than a lot of other industries. Similarly, if you take working for a charity or any other really strong purpose-driven organisation, they often will pay you less because they figure that you're getting a lot out of it in terms of satisfaction.
And so I did some more looking up to find some average salaries for you.
Go on then.
So apparently, on average, somebody in the UK earns 36 and a bit grand. And if you work in financial services, you earn £70,000 a year on average.
The show you're listening to right now brings you insights to help you improve performance and enjoyment of work.
It takes a long time to produce, but we think it's well worth it. It's all in the name of helping you getting the job done well.
All we ask in return is that you share the link to this show with someone that you think would benefit from it. And if you haven't already, click on follow the show wherever you're listening to this podcast right now. Anyway, let's get back to the show.
But there is an interesting thing for me there. So I have worked in insurance and I've also worked for a bank, both of which are financial services. And I think that I enjoyed my time in insurance much more than I did in banking, because I felt when I was working for a bank, I spent my life lending money to people who really shouldn't have money lent to them. Whereas when I was working in insurance, I felt like I was doing something useful for people because you were fixing their roofs when there was a storm or their cars when they had an accident. And so I do think there is something about finding the right industry for you where you feel like you're delivering something, you do something useful, because that will make you happy.
Yeah. But choosing your industry carefully is one way of earning more money. Looking at the types of jobs. So I remember we did a benchmarking exercise in one organisation I was in, and we clearly showed that when you compared it to kind of market rates, analysts were earning the top end of the pay scale. Bottom end of the pay scale was people in HR and people in operations. So there is something about the types of jobs that you have that will also impact in terms of value.
Yeah, but that depends on the industry as well. So,
It does.
For example, if you're an operations person working in a bank, you're probably not going to get paid as much as the analysts. However, if you're an operations person working in, FMCG, running a big factory, then you're probably very well paid. So, yeah, pick your industry and pick your job function.
And then the other one then is pick your company. So if you're working, say, for example, you're working for one of the big four companies in consulting and auditing, you're going to earn a lot more than if you're working in the public sector. So I think the point is industry, job and company, you can't look at it in isolation, but there is massive differences if you make different choices within that kind of that matrix. So what else we got, James?
The next thing I think really is it's about personal development, ongoing developments, which links to the point on education. Yeah. Are you getting the experiences and the qualifications which will help you in your career? Yeah.
Keeping that knowledge current, it also keeps it marketable, doesn't it? I think the other obvious way of earning more money is just climbing the ladder, the corporate ladder. So getting promotions, moving up through the organisation. And I say this as a specific strategy because you can find people that do fantastic work, but they have no interest in getting on. So really understanding what is it that takes to get to the next level, and then going out and building that skill or developing that skill is key. But also when you get promoted, when you get a new job, quite often we do it for the pay rise, but I always think that you should, in any job that you take on, you should prove your worth before you expect to get paid, which is counter to how a lot of people go into these things. They go in get a promotion, get a new job, straight away it's like, right, what are you going to pay me? Well, you haven't proven your worth yet, have you?
Yeah.
It's potential. There's a potential that you're going to do well at this job, but you haven't proven that. And certainly one of the biggest pay rises I ever got was when I took on a new job. They expanded it massively, and I just got on with that expanded role, and I did it for a year until I'd shown my worth. And then at the end of the year, I discussed the pay rise. And awkward as that may sound and that may feel, actually talking about what I was worth in terms of doing that job, but also looking at benchmarks as to people doing that sort of job, what they were paid. That's one way of taking some of the emotion out of asking for a pay rise, is that external comparisons.
But if you're going to do that, you've got to have some very sensible justification for it.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
You're never going to get paid more money because that's just because of what you want.
The other two things which are linked very strongly about earning more money in a corporate environment: networks and moving companies. So let me start with networks. So the people that you know, the people that you work with, the people that you are friendly with, they will be the people who find you new jobs and find you new opportunities. So really, so we said it before, but investing in that network, I think, is all important.
Yeah, I think every piece of work I've done for the last 15 years, everything has been the result of something to do with my network.
But then that leads on to the second thing, which is about moving companies. So I've got another statistic for you.
Go on then.
People who move companies will get an average increase in earnings of 9.5%.
Yeah.
Whereas people who move jobs within a company get an average increase in earning of 2.9%. So it is much, much more lucrative to move companies than just move jobs.
And that's interesting, because I've always been of the view that external hire gets more than the internal promote. And I think that statistically proves it, James.
Well, and, if anybody's I've moved companies, 5 or 6 times in my career.
Yeah.
So if anybody wants proof that you can be an overpaid idiot, there you go. I am the living proof of that. Definitely works.
I'm not going to disagree with you, James.
You couldn't disagree with me. But I think the thing for all of those, before we come on to the next point, is actually there is a huge amount in there about doing the things that you enjoy. And I would just really reiterate that. Don't just chase the money. Working in a job that you enjoy, in an industry that you enjoy, and develop the skills that you enjoy. Because if you're doing those things, then you will do better, rather than flogging yourself trying to be, the world's best actuary or whatever it is when you really don't enjoy it.
Well, I think that's the problem, James, is that if you go one-dimensionally about money, which is I get a certain education, I choose my industry carefully, I've chosen my job, I've chosen my company, you do all of those things, then you develop yourself and you get promotions. And if the core subject and the things that you are doing are stuff that fundamentally you don't enjoy, you won't do particularly well, because you won't put the effort in, you won't unlock discretionary effort to learn new stuff, because it's stuff that you don't enjoy. So I don't believe that to really optimize your earnings without optimizing your enjoyment of something, I don't think that's really possible.
Before we get too preachy, in terms of optimizing your earnings, there is the dark side to the force here. There are other things that you can do if you really
There are some of the things that we wouldn't necessarily recommend, but you can do them, and they will result in earning more money, even if it is temporarily. Things like working out the bonus and reward structures in your company, both officially what's written down, what they say they are going to reward, and practically what they really reward, and then adapting your behaviours. That's a very, very straightforward way of doing things. But equally, one of the classics that I've seen people do very well at is be really great at managing upwards. And when we did an episode previously about managing upwards and how you can do that. But if you do that relentlessly, you'll make yourself a great name. Everyone below you might hate you, but your boss who makes decisions on your pay and reward will probably think well of you, and you will earn more money. I think the other thing is you're being realistic about trying to get to the top of anything that you're doing. It's a minuscule number of people that get to be a CEO or earn footballers' wages or be an entrepreneur. Elon Musk. These are small percentage of people. So being realistic about what's achievable within a certain dimension, you might be able to earn millions as a footballer, but a microscopic percentage of people are successful at that.
Yeah, so it is about playing the averages, quite frankly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's some of the things, James, that we have experienced that people can think of and will help them earn more money. What are some of the downsides to doing some of this stuff?
Do you know there is always somebody who's got a bigger flipping yacht? Doesn't
Yes.
matter how much you earn, there is always somebody who's got more money than you have got. And if you only measure your success on a single dimension, how much money you've earned, you are always going to want more and you are always going to be disappointed. So my strong advice would be don't go down there, because you're heading for a fail.
It's like that saying, James, comparison is the thief of joy. And we both in our career have had a very similar experience of discovering what other people earn. My experience was once my PA, who did a lot of the salaries for my team, she had to input the salaries. The IT department gave her the wrong access, and it gave her access to everyone's salaries in the organisation. So I said to her that, you need to go and tell them they're giving you the wrong access. But before you do that, can you just look up what...
Print off. Yeah.
And so we spent half an hour looking at all these people's salaries, and we had two reactions. One was, it was either, what, James Lawther gets that? He's not worth that. That's ridiculous. Or, is that all James gets paid? Oh my God. You never look at it and think that's spot on, that's right. So just don't go down that route. I mean, it is not good to know other people's salaries. It brings nothing but misery.
Yeah. The other thing is actually having a lot of money. I went to Saint-Tropez this summer on holiday, which, if you don't know, it is the south of France, and it is the playground of the phenomenally rich and famous. Yeah. And I was walking around, and there was one of several yachts, but this yacht was bigger than my house. It was matte black, and the name of the yacht was Apex Predator. And you've got to say to yourself, if that is the best thing you can do with all your money, what is wrong with these people? So don't judge yourself.
Although in fairness, James, I was in Ibiza.
Was it your yacht?
No, I was on Apex Predator, and there was this stalker who kept fucking looking up at my boat.
Yeah,
I was in Ibiza, and we went to the marina there, and somebody had a boat called Boom Shakalaka. Wow. We loved it. It's like, I'd love to be going around on that boat. Anyhow, some of the other things to think about is...
In your boat sensibly, that's what I'm saying, is it? Yeah.
But some of the other things to think about is some of the behaviours that you can show on some of the things that we discussed previously. It can impact your relationships. It can impact how people perceive you. And quite often people look at it with amount of disdain or jealousy. I mean, I remember one example. One of our senior execs in one organisation we worked at was sitting with a group of frontline team members, and he was just talking to them about the fact that he had just got the annual bonus that we all got, and he had spent his on buying a new Porsche. And he
Which
thought...
is probably about 3 times what these guys on the phone were earning, yeah?
Oh, yeah, without a doubt, and some. But I guess the thing was, when... They were all disgusted with him, and they thought he was absolute knob, as rightly they should. But when he was talked to about that, he turned around and says, well, I thought I was being aspirational, I was giving them something to aim for. It's like, no, you're not. You're just looking at an absolute dick. So that's what I mean about sometimes people's behaviour around money can really create a negative perception of them.
Yeah, and the subject of relationships as well. There is the question of the relationships which you have with your family.
Yeah.
Say your wife or husband and your children and your parents. But if you are constantly away working, then not seeing your kids, it's not easy. So I think it is worth just thinking, well, is this money worth it, and what am I paying it off against?
And I think another couple of things as well is it can, as we say, it can drive behaviours and drive results. So if you are ruthlessly going after bonuses and pay rises and promotions, apart from impacting relationships, it can sometimes mean you don't always do the right thing. You don't always get the right results. You don't always behave in the right way because you're just going after the money. And we've all got examples of incentive schemes or targets that drive the wrong behaviour. But if you are just focused on the money, quite often you'll do the wrong thing because you think that earning the money and getting the pay rise makes you right.
Yeah.
And I think it also, if you are very focused on money, it can limit your life choices. And so you are only ever going to take the next big job, the next promotion. And the first thing you're looking at is the money for that job, as opposed to what do you really want to do with your life? What's your purpose in life? What's your focus? So I think there are definitely some significant downsides to just going after the money, aren't there?
Well, and it can take the joy out of work as well. There's a fascinating TED talk by a chap called Dan O'Reilly, which is, I think I said his name right, but it's called Predictably Irrational. You should look it up. But he shows how he just ran some experiments. And what he did was he got some bionicles. If you don't know what bionicles are, they're sort of little Lego sort of stick figures.
Yeah.
Then he put these bionicles out and he let people make bionicles and timed how long they would make them until they got bored. And surprisingly, people quite like making bionicles.
Yeah.
They plug away and they make these things and make these things. Then what he did was he started paying people to make them. I don't know how much he was paying them, 50p a bionicle or whatever the hell it was. But what he discovered was the minute he stopped paying them, people stopped making the bionicles. So the very fact that these people were getting paid for it just crushed any enjoyment they were getting out of the work that they were doing. So it is, thinking, are you enjoying this? Is it really worth it? Because if you're not enjoying it, you're only alive once. So that ends my ethical lesson.
And I think
preachy lesson, I should say.
Well, I think also though, I mean, money, does it really define your success? I mean, often people do think of success, status, importance, power in very financial terms. So superficially, the answer is often yes. But actually, some of the other motivating factors that we've touched on, whether that's what's your personal purpose, what's the work you're doing, what's the satisfaction, what's the enjoyment, what's the impact you're having on others, what's the impact if you're Bill Gates on the world, they are all factors that can be more powerful in terms of motivation than just money.
Oh, absolutely. I think a lot of commercial organisations miss a trick here because they think motivation is all about money, but it really isn't at all. So, I think overplayed. So in summary then, what do we think about this? I think for me, the point is money is important up to a certain point, but after that, it really doesn't matter that much.
We've shared some perspectives in terms of how you can go about increasing your earnings, but be thoughtful of which ones you decide to employ and conscious of the choices and their implications.
Yeah. Don't get trapped in a position where it all becomes about the money, because that is no fun at all.
And back to my favourite film, James, which you will watch this weekend, Jerry Maguire.
Yeah.
It's the journey that Rod Tidwell goes on from at the start. It's all show me the money, and that's all he's interested in. And then by the end, he's talking about the Kwan. He wants the love, the respect, the community, and then the dollars flow.
Oh, very good. So what does Kwan stand for then?
James, don't spoil a good story, mate. That's the ending.
Right.
Watch the film and then you'll know.
All right, super. So, watch the film, don't listen to this podcast. On
Thanks,
that
everyone.
note, I'm going to shut up.
Yeah. Thanks, everyone.
Speak to you later. We cover a whole host of topics on this podcast,
From purpose to corporate jargon.
but always focused on one thing: getting the job done well.
Easier said than done. So, if you've got unhappy customers or employees, bosses or regulators breathing down your neck,
If your backlogs are out of control and your costs are spiralling, and that big IT transformation project that you've been promised just keeps failing to deliver,
we can help. If you need to improve your performance, your team's performance, or your organisation's, get in touch at jimmy@ajobdonewell.com.
or James@jobdonewell.com.